Priya Kesh stood in the dust of the market square, her hands clenched at her sides, while the matchmaker's voice rang out over the heads of browsing farmers and merchants like a town crier announcing spoiled grain. "Barren stock," the woman said, not bothering to lower her voice. 3 years married, not a single quickening. The clan dissolved the bond last spring. I cannot in good conscience offer damaged goods to honest families seeking strong alliances. Priya felt the weight of 24 stares, human and orc alike. Her green skin seemed to burn under the afternoon sun. She had come to the market hoping the distance from her clan's territory would mean anonymity, a fresh start. She had been a fool. "I can work," Priya said, hating the way her voice came out small. "I am strong. I know animals, and this is a marriage market, girl, not a hiring fair." The matchmaker waved a dismissive hand, her many rings catching the light. "A female who cannot bear is a mouth to feed with no return. Go home. Perhaps your mother's sister will take you in as kitchen help." The rejection was not new. Priya had heard variations of it from her former husband, from the clan elders, from her own mother who had wept as though Priya had died. But hearing it shouted in a crowd of strangers, reduced to livestock terminology in front of people who already thought orcs were little better than beasts, made something crack behind her ribs. She turned to leave, blinking hard, and nearly collided with a man who had been standing just behind her. He was tall, with the kind of robin build that came from years of physical labor. His hair was dark brown, shot through with early gray, though he could not have been much past 30. His face was weathered, tanned deep from sun, and his gray eyes were narrowed in a way that made him look perpetually skeptical of the world. He wore work clothes, sturdy and plain, and his boots were caked with dried mud. "You know horses?" he asked. Priya blinked. "What?" "Horses," he repeated, his voice a low rasp. "You said you know animals." Yes. My clan keeps goats and cattle, but I worked with the cart horses mainly, breaking and training." The man nodded slowly as though filing away the information. "Name's Paxton Thorne. I run a ranch 2 days north of here, up in the hill country. I have 40 head of semi-wild horses I bought off a herd reduction last fall. They need breaking and I need help. Room, board, and a silver piece a week. Interested?" Priya stared at him. Behind her, she could hear the matchmaker already calling for the next hopeful to step forward, her humiliation forgotten. "You are offering me work, just said so. You are human. Last I checked." His mouth did not quite smile, but something in his eyes might have been humor. "Humans do not usually, there is," she fumbled for the right words, aware that she was making a mess of this. "I am orc. Notice that too." Paxton shifted his weight, hooking his thumbs in his belt. "Look, I need someone who can handle difficult animals and is not going to run off after a month when ranch life gets dull. You need work and a place to be. This is not charity. You will earn your keep. But I treat my people fair and I do not tolerate nonsense. Yes or no?" Priya realized her throat had gone tight. It was not a marriage offer. It was not acceptance or validation. It was simply work, offered plainly, as though she were a person with useful skills rather than a defective vessel. And right now, that felt like more than she had any right to expect. "Yes," she said. Paxton nodded once. "Get your things, we leave at first light." Priya had no things. Everything she owned fit in a canvas pack she had left at the boarding house. 2 changes of clothes, a comb, a small knife, and the broken shards of a marriage bracelet she had not yet found the courage to throw away. She collected it in silence, paid her bill with the last of her coins, and met Paxton at the livery stable as the sun was setting. He had a sturdy bay gelding and a pack mule loaded with supplies from the market. He gave Priya a critical look, then gestured to the mule. "You can ride." "Yes." Good. It is a long walk otherwise. They set out in the fading light, leaving the market town behind. Paxton did not speak much, and Priya was grateful. She was not ready for questions or small talk. She focused instead on the steady rhythm of the mule's gait, the creak of saddle leather, the evening birdsong rising from the fields they passed. They camped that night in a grove of cottonwoods beside a narrow creek. Paxton built a small fire and cooked a simple meal of salt pork, beans, and hard bread. He offered Priya an equal share without comment, then settled on the opposite side of the fire with his bedroll. "We will reach the ranch by midday tomorrow," he said, poking at the coals with a stick. "It is just me and an older fellow named Wendell who helps with the heavy work when his joints allow. It is not fancy. The house needs repairs I have not had time for, but it is solid and the land is good." "How long have you had it?" 4 years. "I bought it with my mustering out pay after the border wars. Previous owner could not make it profitable and sold cheap. I have been building the herd since." Priya processed that. A veteran then. That explained the scars on his hands, the careful way he scanned the horizon even here, miles from any frontier. "You fought orcs." It was not a question. Paxton glanced at her across the fire, his expression unreadable. "I fought in a war," he said finally. "I fought whoever I was ordered to fight. I saw enough killing to last a lifetime. I came out here to raise livestock, not to carry old hatreds around like baggage." It was the most he had said at once since they met. Priya nodded slowly, pulling her blanket tighter against the chill. "For what it is worth," she said quietly, "I am sorry for the war, for all of it." Paxton shrugged. "You did not start it. Get some sleep. Long ride tomorrow." He rolled over, his back to the fire, and within minutes his breathing had evened into sleep. Priya lay awake longer, staring up at the stars through the cottonwood branches, wondering what she had gotten herself into. The ranch, when they reached it the next afternoon, was exactly as Paxton had described, solid but plain. The house was a single-story structure of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch. The barn was larger, built to hold hay and tack, with a loft above. Beyond that stretched a series of post and rail corrals, and past those, the land rolled away in grassy hills dotted with scrub oak and juniper. The horses were in the largest corral, a milling herd of bays, chestnuts, and a few piebalds. They were shaggy and wild-eyed, and when Paxton and Priya approached, they scattered to the far side of the enclosure, snorting and tossing their heads. "Beautiful," Priya murmured. Paxton gave her a sidelong look. "Most people say they look like trouble. They do, but they are also beautiful." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Wendell is off visiting his daughter for the week. I will show you the bunkhouse." The bunkhouse was a smaller log building near the barn with 4 narrow beds and a pot-bellied stove. It was clean but Spartan. Paxton set her pack on one of the beds. "This one is yours. Wendell takes the far corner. I am in the main house. Meals are at dawn, midday, and dusk. I cook simple and I cook enough. You are welcome to use the kitchen if you prefer to make your own." "I will eat what you make," Priya said. "I am not particular." Paxton nodded. "Good. Rest today. We start with the horses tomorrow." He left her then, and Priya sank onto the bed, testing the mattress. It was stuffed with straw and thinner than she was used to, but it was clean and it was hers. For the first time in months, she felt the tight knot in her chest loosen slightly. She could do this. It was just work, just horses. She knew horses. The work began the next morning early, with the sun barely cresting the hills. Paxton was already in the corral when Priya arrived, a coiled rope in his hands. He handed her a second rope without preamble. "We start with the calmest ones and work up," he said. "I will take the bay mare with the star. You take the chestnut gelding with the white socks. Slow and steady. No sudden moves. Let them come to you. Priya stepped into the corral, her boots scuffing the dirt. The horses eyed her warily, but they did not bolt. She stood still, the rope loose in her hands, and waited. Patience was the first lesson of working with horses. Animals could sense fear, aggression, haste. They responded to calm, to quiet confidence. Priya had learned that as a girl, working in her mother's pastures, and she had not forgotten. The chestnut gelding watched her for a long moment, his ears flicking back and forth. Then, cautiously, he took a step closer. Then another. Priya stayed motionless, letting him approach on his own terms. When he was close enough, she extended her hand slowly, letting him sniff her palm. His breath was warm and grassy. She murmured something soft in the old Orc tongue, a nonsense phrase her grandmother had used, and the gelding's ears swiveled forward. "Good boy," she whispered. "You are a fine boy, are you not?" By midday, she had a halter on him and was leading him in slow circles around the corral. Paxton had made similar progress with the bay mare. He paused to watch Priya work, his expression thoughtful. "You have done this before," he said. "I told you I had." "People say a lot of things. You actually know what you are doing." Priya felt a small, unfamiliar glow of pride. "Thank you." They worked through the afternoon until the shadows grew long and the horses were tired enough to be docile. Paxton called a halt and they turned the two they had been working back in with the herd. "Not bad for a first day," Paxton said, coiling his rope. "You have good instincts. So do you," he shrugged. "I have had practice. Come on, I will make supper." Supper was venison stew, thick with potatoes and carrots, and fresh bread that Paxton admitted he had bought from a neighbor rather than baked himself. They ate at a rough plank table on the porch, watching the sun sink below the hills. "This is good," Priya said. "The stew, I mean, and the land." "It is peaceful here." "It is," Paxton agreed. "That is why I chose it. I got tired of noise." They lapsed into silence, but it was not uncomfortable. Priya found herself relaxing in a way she had not in months, maybe years. There was no judgment here, no weight of expectation. Just work, food, and the quiet company of someone who did not seem to care what she was or was not. The days fell into a rhythm. Each morning, Priya and Paxton worked with the horses, slowly building trust and teaching the basics of saddle and bridle. In the afternoons, they mended fences, hauled water, and tended to the dozen other tasks that kept a ranch running. Wendell returned after a week, a grizzled man with a limp and a dry sense of humor. He accepted Priya's presence without comment, treating her as just another hired hand. "You got a good touch with them beasts," he told her one afternoon, watching her soothe a skittish pinto. "Better than most I have seen." "Thank you," Priya said, surprised. "Do not thank me. It is just the truth." Wendell spat tobacco juice into the dirt and limped off to check the water trough. By the end of the first month, half the herd was broke to saddle. Paxton rode into the nearest town and came back with a buyer, a stocky man who ran a freight company and needed reliable mounts. He looked over the horses, tested a few, and nodded. "I will take 10, he said. 40 silver for the lot." It was a fair price, maybe even generous. Paxton shook on it and the man left with the horses in tow. That evening, Paxton counted out 5 silver pieces and handed them to Priya. "Your wages plus a bonus," he said. "You earned it." "We would not have sold half that many without your help." Priya stared at the coins in her palm. It was more money than she had held in months. "I just did the work you hired me for. And you did it well. Take the money, Priya." She closed her fingers around the coins, her throat tight. "Thank you." Paxton waved a hand, dismissing it. "We have more horses to break and a cattle buyer coming in the fall. If you want to stay on, the job is yours." "I want to stay." Something shifted in his expression, too quick to name. "Good." The seasons turned. Summer heat gave way to autumn cool. and the herd dwindled as more horses were sold. Paxton bought a small herd of cattle, lean-range stock that needed fattening, and Priya helped drive them to the upper pastures where the grass was still green. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, the feel of the land. She learned that Paxton was up before dawn every day, that he preferred black coffee and silence in the mornings, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a saber cut and nightmares he never spoke of. She learned that he was fair, patient, and stubborn as a mule when he believed he was right. And she learned slowly that she was happy. It was a strange feeling, unfamiliar and fragile. Priya had spent so long defining herself by her failures, her inability to conceive, the dissolution of her marriage, her clan's rejection, that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply be useful, to be good at something, to be valued for her skills rather than her biology. Paxton never asked about her past, never pressed for details about her marriage or her clan. He treated her as though she had simply appeared fully formed at the market that day, a competent horsewoman looking for work. It was a kindness she had not known she needed. Winter came, sharp and cold. The ranch slowed its pace. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, and the remaining horses were kept close to the barn. Paxton spent his days mending tack, shoring up the barns against snow and chopping firewood. Priya helped where she could, and in the evenings they sat by the fire in the main house. Paxton had started inviting her in when the bunkhouse grew too cold and talked. They talked about small things, mostly. The weather, the health of the livestock, Wendell's complaints about his joints. But sometimes, late at night when the fire had burned low, they talked about larger things. Paxton spoke haltingly about the war, about the friends he had lost, about the guilt of surviving when so many had not. Priya told him about her marriage, about the crushing shame of her barrenness, about the way her clan had looked at her as though she were broken. "You are not broken," Paxton said quietly one night, his eyes on the fire. "You are just you. That is enough." Priya felt tears prick her eyes. It has never been enough before. Then those people were fools. It was the closest he had come to tenderness, and Priya held the words close, a small warmth against the cold. Spring arrived late, but when it came in a rush of green and birdsong. The cattle were driven back to the high pastures, and Paxton bought another herd of horses, this time from a breeder who had overextended himself and needed quick cash. They were better stock than the first herd, younger and less wild, and they fetched better prices. By midsummer, the ranch was profitable. Paxton paid off the last of his debts and even hired a second hand, a young man named Thad who was willing to work cheap in exchange for learning the trade. Priya watched the ranch grow and felt a fierce, possessive pride. She had helped build this. Her skill, her labor, her patience with the animals, it had mattered. She mattered. And somewhere along the way, she realized she was in love with Paxton Thorne. It crept up on her quietly, without fanfare. She noticed it first in the way her heart lifted when she heard his voice in the mornings, the way her eyes sought him out across the corrals, the way she memorized the small details of his face, the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the rare, fleeting smile that softened his features. She did not tell him. What would be the point? He had hired her to work with horses, not to complicate his life with feelings he had never asked for. And besides, what could she offer him? She was still barren, still an orc in a world that did not look kindly on her kind. He deserved someone whole, someone who could give him children and a future. But the heart, Priya learned, did not much care about logic. It was late summer when the clan delegation arrived. Priya was in the corral with a young mare, working her on a lunge line when she heard the sound of hooves on the road. She looked up and saw them, a group of 6 orcs on horseback, dressed in the formal tunics of her clan's council. At the head of the group was her uncle Gareth, a broad-shouldered male with graying hair and a stern expression. Her stomach dropped. Paxton emerged from the barn, Wendell and Thad behind him. He took in the delegation with a single, assessing glance, then walked to the fence line and waited. Gareth dismounted, handing his reins to one of the others. He approached the fence, his eyes on Priya. "Niece," he said, his voice formal, "you are well." "I am," Priya said carefully. "Why are you here? We have come to bring you home. The council has reconsidered your situation." Priya felt the mare tug on the lunge line and forced herself to focus, to keep her movements calm. "What situation?" "Your unmarried status. It was a mistake to dissolve your first bond. You have clearly proven your value through your work here." Gareth gestured at the ranch, the well-kept corrals, the healthy horses. "The council has arranged a new match, a male from the western clans, a widower with 3 children who needs a capable partner. He has agreed to overlook your barrenness in light of your other skills." The words hit like stones. Overlook your barrenness, as though it were a flaw to be generously ignored. "I am not interested," Priya said, her voice shaking. "This is not a negotiation, Priya. You are clan. Your place is with your people, not working as a laborer for humans." Paxton stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "She is a free woman and a hired hand on my ranch. She can leave if she wants, but she is not obligated to go anywhere." Gareth turned his gaze on Paxton, and Priya saw the flicker of disdain in her uncle's eyes. "This does not concern you, human. This is a clan matter. It concerns me when you show up on my land making demands of my people." Paxton's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Priya works for me. She has a contract and a place here as long as she wants it. If she chooses to go with you, that is her choice. But you do not get to drag her off against her will." Gareth's jaw tightened. "You do not understand our ways." "I understand enough. I understand you cast her out when you decided she was not useful, and now you want her back because she has made something of herself. That is not honor. That is convenience." The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Priya stared at Paxton, her chest tight. He had just defended her in front of her own clan, something no one, not her mother, not her former husband, not anyone had ever done. Gareth's expression darkened. "You overstep, rancher." "Maybe, but I am still right." One of the other council members, a female with silver-streaked hair, leaned down from her horse. "Priya, be reasonable. You cannot spend your life in exile working for wages. You are orc. You belong with your people." "My people cast me out," Priya said, her voice stronger now. "You told me I was worthless. You dissolved my marriage and told my mother to mourn me as though I had died. Now you come here and tell me I should be grateful for a new match with a man who will overlook my barrenness." She shook her head. "No, I am not going." Gareth took a step forward, his hand on the fence rail. "Priya," she said, "no." Paxton moved to stand beside Priya, his presence solid and unwavering. "You should leave." For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension stretched thin and brittle. Then Gareth exhaled sharply and stepped back. "Very well," he said coldly. "But do not think this is over. The council will not forget this insult." He mounted his horse and signaled the others. They turned and rode back down the road, dust rising in their wake. Priya stood frozen, the lunge line still in her hands. The mare nuzzled her shoulder and she realized she was shaking. Paxton touched her arm gently. "You all right?" "I do not know," Priya whispered. I do not know. Come on. Let us get the mare settled and then we can talk." They worked in silence, returning the mare to the corral and ensuring the other horses had water. Wendell and Thad made themselves scarce, sensing the need for privacy. When the work was done, Paxton led Priya to the porch and gestured for her to sit. He sat beside her, elbows on his knees, staring out at the hills. "You could have gone," he said finally. If you wanted to, I would not have stopped you, I know, but I did not want to go." "Why?" Priya hesitated, then decided she had nothing left to lose. "Because this is my home now. The ranch, this life, you," she swallowed hard. "I do not expect anything from you, Paxton. I know I am just a hired hand, but I am happy here. I do not want to leave." Paxton was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to look at her, his gray eyes searching her face. "You are not just a hired hand," he said quietly. "You have not been for a long time." Priya's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean I have been trying to figure out how to tell you this for months, and I keep losing my nerve." He scrubbed a hand over his face, looking almost embarrassed. "I am not good with words, Priya. I am better with animals and hard work. But you matter to me, more than I know how to say. When I saw your uncle trying to take you away, I realized I could not let that happen. Not because you are useful, though you are. But because he stopped, exhaling sharply. Because I love you." The world seemed to tilt. Priya stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You love me?" "Yes, but I am barren. I cannot give you children." "I do not care about that." Paxton's voice was fierce now, urgent. "I care about you. I care about the way you gentle the horses, the way you hum while you work, the way you make me laugh even when I do not want to. I care that you are kind and strong and you see the world in a way I never could. I do not need children, Priya. I need you." Tears spilled down Priya's cheeks, hot and fast. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have for so long. I thought you could not possibly." Paxton reached for her, pulling her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his embrace. "I am sorry I did not say it sooner," he murmured into her hair. "I was afraid you would not feel the same, afraid I would ruin what we had." "You did not ruin anything," Priya said, pulling back to look at him. "You saved me. You gave me a place to belong when I had nowhere else to go. You saw me as a person, not as a failure." Paxton cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You were never a failure. You were always enough." And then he kissed her, soft and tentative, as though afraid she might disappear. Priya kissed him back, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into that single, perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, Paxton rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, his voice rough. "Not because of some clan arrangement or because you need a place to stay. Marry me because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Priya laughed, the sound watery and bright. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They married a month later, in a simple ceremony on the ranch. The local minister came out to officiate, and Wendell and Thad stood as witnesses. Priya wore a dress she had sewn herself, plain but clean, and Paxton wore his best shirt and a nervous expression. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Paxton kissed her in front of everyone, and Wendell whooped and clapped. Thad grinned and shook Paxton's hand, and the minister smiled kindly and wished them many happy years. There was no grand feast, no delegation of guests. Just a simple meal on the porch, under the stars, with the people who mattered. "To Priya Thorne," Wendell said, raising his cup of cider. "The finest horsewoman in the territory and a damn fine addition to this ranch." "To Priya," Paxton echoed, his eyes warm. Priya felt her heart swell. Priya Thorne. She had a new name, a new life, a new family. She had never imagined it could be this good. The years passed and the ranch flourished. Paxton and Priya worked side by side, building their herd and their reputation. Buyers came from farther and farther away, drawn by the quality of their stock and the skill of their training. Wendell eventually retired, too old and sore to keep up with the work, but he stayed on the ranch in a small cabin Paxton built for him near the main house. Thad stayed too, growing into a capable rancher in his own right and eventually marrying a girl from the neighboring homestead. Priya and Paxton built a new wing onto the house, adding a larger kitchen and a sitting room with wide windows that looked out over the hills. It was more space than they needed, but it felt right to have room to grow, room to breathe. And then, one spring afternoon, Paxton came home from town with news. "There is a situation in the valley," he said, sitting down at the table where Priya was mending a bridle. "You know the Carters, the family who ran the mill. I remember them. What happened? They died. Fever took both of them in the winter. They had a son about 8 years old. The boy has been staying with neighbors, but they cannot keep him long term. They are looking for someone to take him in." Priya set down the bridle, her heart beating faster. "An orphan?" "Yes. I thought maybe we could offer if you wanted. I know we never talked about children, but yes," Priya said quickly. "Yes, I want to." Paxton smiled, that rare, full smile that lit up his whole face. "I was hoping you would say that." They rode down to the valley the next day and met the boy. His name was Alder, a skinny, serious child with dark hair and wary eyes. He had been through more than any child should have to endure, and it showed in the way he held himself, tense and ready to run. Priya knelt down to his level. "Hello, Alder. My name is Priya. This is my husband, Paxton. We have a ranch up in the hills, and we would like you to come live with us if you are willing." Alder stared at her, taking in her green skin, her small tusks, her pointed ears. "You are an orc." "I am." "I have never met an orc before." "Well, now you have." Priya smiled gently. "We have horses and cattle and a big house with room for you. You would have your own bed and plenty to eat and chores to do if you want to help out. We cannot replace your parents, Alder. But we can give you a home and a family if you will let us." Alder looked at Paxton, then back at Priya. "You really want me?" "We really do," Paxton said, his voice gruff but kind. Alder hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I will come." They brought him home that day, and life on the ranch changed again. Alder was quiet at first, unsure of his place, but he warmed slowly to the rhythm of ranch life. He followed Paxton around like a shadow, learning to mend fences and care for the livestock. He helped Priya in the barn, and she taught him how to approach the horses, how to read their moods, how to earn their trust. At night, they sat together by the fire, and Priya told him stories from her childhood, tales of her grandmother's wisdom and the wild places her clan had roamed. Paxton taught him to whittle, and Wendell taught him to play cards, and slowly, Alder began to smile. He began to laugh. He began to call them Ma and Pa shyly at first, then with growing confidence. One evening, when Alder was 10, he came to Priya while she was grooming a horse. "Ma," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you and Pa choose me? I mean, you could have had any kid." "Why me?" Priya set down the brush and turned to face him. "Because you needed a family and we needed you. Because when we met you, we saw a brave, good-hearted boy who deserved love and a home. You are our son, Alder. Not by blood, maybe, but by choice. And choice matters just as much." Alder hugged her then, fierce and tight, and Priya held him close, her heart full. The years continued to pass. Alder grew into a tall, capable young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's way with animals. He took over more and more of the ranch work, and Paxton and Priya found themselves with the luxury of time to sit on the porch in the evenings, time to ride out to the hills and watch the sunset, time to simply be together. One evening, when Alder was 16 and out checking the cattle with Thad, Paxton and Priya sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if we had not met?" Priya asked. Paxton considered this. "Sometimes. I think I would have kept on like I was, working the ranch, getting by, not really living. What about you?" "I think I would have withered," Priya said honestly. "Without you, without this place, I think I would have just faded away. You gave me a reason to keep going." Paxton took her hand, lacing their fingers together. You gave me one too. I was so focused on surviving, on keeping my head down and not feeling too much. You taught me it was okay to want more, to hope for more. Priya leaned her head on his shoulder. We built a good life, did we not? We did. We really did. They sat in silence, the night air cool and sweet, the sounds of the ranch settling around them. Inside the house, a lantern glowed in the window. In the barn, the horses shifted in their stalls. In the distance, a coyote called and another answered. I love you, Priya said softly. I love you too, Paxton replied. Always have. Always will. And in that moment, with the stars overhead and the land they had built together stretching out in all directions, Priya Thorne felt a peace so profound it took her breath away. She had been rejected, cast out, told she was worthless. But she had found her way to this place, to this man, to this life. She had found love, not in spite of who she was, but because of it. And that, she thought, was worth more than all the gold in the world. The ranch continued to thrive, becoming known throughout the region for its quality livestock and fair dealing. Paxton and Priya's reputation grew, and people came from far and wide to buy horses or cattle or simply to seek their advice. Alder grew into a fine young man, strong and honest, with a gift for working with animals that rivaled even Priya's. He eventually married a kind-hearted young woman from town, and they built a small house on the far edge of the ranch property. When they had their first child, a daughter, they asked Priya and Paxton to be godparents. Priya held the baby girl in her arms, marveling at the tiny fingers, the perfect features. She was not her granddaughter by blood, but she was family all the same. And that was enough, more than enough. Wendell passed away peacefully in his sleep one winter night at the age of 78. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, and Paxton carved a simple headstone. Wendell Moss, loyal friend and true hand. Thad eventually bought a parcel of land adjacent to the ranch and started his own operation, though he remained close, and the two families worked together often. Priya and Paxton grew older together, their hair graying, their hands growing more calloused and weathered. But their love never wavered. If anything, it deepened, becoming a quiet, steady thing that required no words, no grand gestures. It simply was. One evening, many years after their wedding, they sat on the porch watching Alder and his wife play with their children in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. You know, Paxton said, I never thought I would have this. A family. A home that felt like more than just a place to sleep. I thought I would spend my life alone, working until I could not work anymore and then just fading away. I thought the same, Priya said. I thought my life was over when the clan cast me out. I thought I would spend my days in shame, doing whatever work I could find, never belonging anywhere. Paxton squeezed her hand. We were both wrong, we were, and I am so grateful for that. They watched as Alder scooped up his youngest, a boy of 3, and spun him in a circle. The child shrieked with laughter, his joy bright and unrestrained. You think he is happy? Priya asked. I think he is, Paxton said. He has a good life, a family who loves him. That is more than a lot of people get. It is more than I ever dreamed of, Priya murmured. Paxton turned to look at her, his gray eyes soft. You deserved it, Priya. You deserved all of this and more. I am just glad I got to be the one to give it to you. Priya felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. You did not just give it to me. We built it together, every day, every year. This life is ours, Paxton. Yours and mine. Ours, Paxton agreed. He leaned over and kissed her, gently, the way he had kissed her on their wedding day and 1,000 times since. When they pulled apart, Alder was calling to them from the yard, waving them down to join the children. Priya and Paxton stood hand in hand and walked down the porch steps together. The children ran to meet them, chattering excitedly about a butterfly they had seen, a game they wanted to play. Priya scooped up the youngest and tickled him until he giggled. Paxton ruffled the hair of the oldest, a serious little girl who was already showing signs of her father's quiet determination. They played until the sun set, and the stars began to appear, until the children were yawning and rubbing their eyes. Alder and his wife gathered them up, promising to visit again soon, and walked back to their house. Priya and Paxton stood in the yard, watching them go, the night settling soft and cool around them. "Come on," Paxton said, tugging her hand. "Let us go inside. I will make us some tea." They walked back to the house together, their steps slow and easy, the kind of pace that came from years of walking side by side. Inside, Paxton put the kettle on while Priya lit the lamps. They moved around each other with the ease of long practice, each anticipating the other's needs. When the tea was ready, they sat at the table, their hands wrapped around warm mugs, and talked about nothing in particular. The state of the fences, the health of the new foal, whether they should plant more vegetables in the garden this year. It was ordinary, it was mundane, it was perfect. And as Priya sat there, across from the man she loved in the home they had built together, she felt a deep, abiding contentment. She had been rejected, yes. She had been told she was worthless, broken, unlovable, but she had found love anyway. Not because someone had overlooked her flaws, but because someone had seen her whole and chosen her anyway. Paxton Thorne had called her his bride, his partner, his love. And in doing so, he had given her the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that she was enough, exactly as she was. They finished their tea and went to bed, lying side by side in the darkness, Paxton's arm around her shoulders, Priya's head on his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, a familiar rhythm that lulled her toward sleep. "Good night, Priya," he murmured. "Good night, Paxton," she whispered back. And as sleep claimed her, Priya smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring more of the same, hard work, simple joys, and the love of the man who had seen her worth when no one else could. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. And it was everything she would ever need.